What's happening, guys? And welcome back to the channel. And at Anfield on Saturday evening, it finished Liverpool 1, Chelsea 1. And George, for Chelsea fans, perhaps a slight tinge of disappointment to only walk away with Anfield with a point. But given the circumstances, playing 45 minutes with 10 men, I thought it was an outstanding performance. But before we get into all of that, Thomas Tuchel, who he always is well known for making a lot of changes, just the one change from the side that beat Arsenal and N'Golo Kante naturally slotting back into that midfield. For me, I feel that was the right decision. How about you, keeping the side the same virtually from Arsenal? I mean, for me, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. I didn't think it needed to be changed. I think it shows that he's happy with the start again. We were contemplating whether Chilwell was perhaps going to play this game for his defensive ability, but again, he's gone with Alonso as well at the back. I think we also said in the preview that maybe he would bring Thiago Silva possibly featured, which he ended up doing it in forced circumstances, which we'll get onto. But other than that, you predicted the front three. I think he's probably favouring that front three now, and same with the midfield. So great to see Kante back. Obviously, we don't know what's happened subsequently with the injury, but I think that's probably, at the moment, in terms of form, that's probably our best lineup.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that in given current circumstances. And Georgia was a good start to the game from Chelsea. I thought we looked really good in the opening quarter, opening 15 minutes. And, you know, we get the goal from a corner. Kai Havertz with a fantastic header. You can argue, did he mean it? Did he not mean it? Even if he didn't mean it, you know, it's a great header to flick it on into the danger area. George, what are you thinking when we go 1-0 up? You thinking kind of sit tight or push for the second? And do you feel that, you know, Havertz meant that, or do you think it's a little bit lucky?
I think it's like you said. I think he's trying to put it in the right area. I think he's intending to do the flick onto the far post. Whether he's seen the goalkeeper off his line, he's tried to guide it in that corner is another thing. But you earn your luck from the quality of the connection. So he's made the run to the near post. He's guided it on. And it's in such a great area that even if it doesn't go in, I think someone's tapping that in at the far stick. So, mate, when we go 1-0 up, I was honestly, maybe I underestimate Chelsea a little bit, but I was a bit surprised. I think Anfield's such a difficult place to go. First 5-10 minutes, electric. I mean, Liverpool just pressing, putting us under pressure, and we soaked it up really, really well. And then when we get the goal, I think, the crowd completely changed. And that's exactly what you want at Anfield. You want to shut them up as early as possible. And from then, mate, we really did have chances to kill the game. Mason Mount, particularly when he got, Lukaku got the spin, had a couple of chances here. We made a couple of poor decisions in the final third, which option to go with. But certainly the one that sticks out for me was the Mason Mount chance where he just guides it past the far post with the side foot that really he should be hitting the target. But yeah, and then, mate, obviously, then the controversy that you're going to come on to now just before half time. But the first half, I thought we were really, really good. And I do a disservice to Chelsea, but we're so dangerous on the counter attack and so solid at the back that we really can cause problems to any team.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I just felt, there were opportunities, as you mentioned, for that 2-0. And Lukaku, who I thought had a decent game, obviously it was going to be much tougher up against Virgil van Dijk than it was up against Pablo Mari and Rob Holding. But I thought he did really well, particularly second half, which we'll come on to, where he really did a great job for the team, really helped out in the defensive situations, etc. But that one chance you mentioned where he spins Matip, he's got Mount to his left, Havertz kind of central, slightly to the right. I just feel that goes back to your poor decision making. I feel that he probably should have played Havertz in, who was in a much better position to make that 2-0. He goes wide to Mount, and Mount doesn't really shoot. And he doesn't really cross. He does something in between the two, and eventually it ends up avoiding Havertz in the box, and it ends up going wide of the far post. But a massive, massive opportunity there. But yeah, George, come on to the main talking point now. Obviously, unfortunately, Reece James getting a red card for what is deemed a deliberate handball on the line. But before we get to that, George, just how disappointed are you with the kind of the chaos that came just before that, with number of times failing to clear the ball out of the box? You'd never have really got to that situation in the first place.
I think if there's one criticism of Chelsea throughout, not just Frank Lampard, but Thomas Tuchel as well, it's sometimes these game management and these transitional phases. You're looking at it, we give away a corner kick in stoppage time in the first half. And, we managed to deal with it. And then when the ball comes back out, It gets lofted to the far post, and it's just absolute chaos. I mean, there's no communication between Alonso and Mendy when Mendy's coming to catch the ball, so that's poor. And then it's just a game of pinball in and around the box, which looks like schoolboy defending for as solid as we are. And then obviously the penalty decision. I mean, it's disappointing because we were playing so well, and for something for that to happen at that moment, a lot of sides would then, I think, mentally struggle to cope and rebuild. But yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to go into the penalty in detail. For me, I think that the issue I have is the consistency of what is given and what's not given. I mean, some referees say this can't be a penalty because it's so close to his body, and I think there was a similar one actually in the Champions League final when I think it was Mahrez rifles it at Reece James and he's got his hand down by his side, and nothing's given. But then very similar on the line here, and I just don't understand it. I mean, like Azpilicueta said when he came on for his interview, you have to naturally move your arms as a footballer. You can't have your arms glued to your side or behind your back. It's just not a natural movement. So therefore, what is he supposed to do? And especially as it comes off a deflection off another body part, that's what I'm really struggling with here. So therefore, it's not intentional. But yeah, you're going to come on to it in more detail about the VAR and everything else. But I just so disappointing. But it's one of those things.
Yeah, it is one of those things. I think particularly what's more disappointing is the fact it's right at the end of half time. We've had a great first half, probably be, tails up going into the dressing room 1-0 up at half time, to then concede that equaliser right on half time and be a man down for the second half. It completely changes the mood in the dressing room. It's a complete change of tactics for the second half. And that's probably the most disappointing thing. In terms of the penalty itself, look, for me, yes, it's a penalty. It has to be. You can't not give that as a penalty. But for me, I'm out on the red card. It's not a red card. That's double punishment. For me, it's either penalty or red card. You don't have both. So, what's he meant to do? You can't lift your knee up or legs up without moving your arm to help you balance. So short of chopping his right arm off, what's Reece James meant to do? I don't think any common sense is really used in officiating at the moment. A clear deflection off his leg onto his arm, therefore, to me, says that is not deliberate. It's accidental handball. He can't get his arm out of the way. Like if you're saying that a deliberate handball, that's like moving your arms, like making a save like a goalkeeper. Reece James is not unnaturally making his body bigger to stop the ball going in. So yeah, from deliberate handball, definitely not in my opinion. Another thing that's really irritating was the length of time that Anthony Taylor spent at the monitor. The monitor's there to help the referees. It's a great thing to go and look at. One, why are they showing him a still image, not the actual footage? As a referee, if you go over to the monitor, you've got a still image, defender on the goal line, ball hitting his arm, then obviously you're going to think, well, that's deliberate and it's a red. Why are they not showing the actual footage? And why is he not spending longer at the monitor to examine it? So, yeah, I just think we need some more consistency of the decision-making, as you said, like things like Mo Salah booting the ball away. If you boot the ball away, that's a booking every time. So why has Anthony Taylor not booked him for that? It's just small things like that. But, we can talk about it all day, the penalty decision, but you still got to go in, keep your heads up at half time, come out second half and do a really good job. And George, that's exactly what we did. Obviously, second half, he has to sacrifice Kai Havertz and brings on Thiago Silva. How impressed were you with Thiago Silva in that second half, considering, he hasn't featured at all this season? He came in probably one of the most difficult games of the season, and he was outstanding, didn't put a foot wrong at all.
It was honestly just watching class. He just oozes class. I mean, he's clearly had an effect in the dressing room, and people are questioning the signing of Thiago Silva, and probably including myself, actually. But he just shows how experienced and how good he is, and how good you have to be at the very top level. He's an example to all those youngsters coming through, Christensen, Chalobah, and even some of the senior players. I mean, he's just got that really calming presence where nothing seems to faze him. And to come on, in circumstances when we know it's a kind of damage control. We're up against it away at Anfield. He hasn't kicked a ball on a pitch for the first team this season, and he was just taking touches in the box, taking balls out the air. It just shows what the levels. I mean, we were speaking to Eddie on the podcast, a week ago, and he was talking about those levels and that step up from being a Chalobah to a Thiago Silva. Well, that was proof right there in viewing of how good you have to be. And I'm just proud of the team. I think it was like you said just before we came on air that was probably our best performance. Not the best result, but in terms of the team unity together, the fact that we had to play for 45 minutes with 10 men, and we came away with a point, and the fact that we defended so well as a unit together just shows how strong mentally and physically that we are this season. And you take that point all day long in the season. It's a point gain for us and 2 points drop for Liverpool, I think.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Couldn't agree more with that in terms of our best performance of the season, without doubt. Another player who I thought was absolutely outstanding, you just touched on him. How impressed have you been with Andreas Christensen, not just this season, but the back end of last season as well? And really, ever since Thomas Tuchel's come in, under Frank Lampard, Christensen was kind of in and out the side, making a lot of mistakes, question marks about his future. But ever since the manager's come in, the guy's been absolutely outstanding. Arguably, could be our best defender at the club.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how probably much confidence comes into play in football and psychology, because I think technically he's the same player that he always has been. Likes to play out the back, likes to come out with it, but for whatever reason, I think Thomas Tuchel's just found a switch and just probably put his arm around his shoulder and believes in him, and he's got experience either side of him in this formation which suits his style of play, and he's just been a rock ever since. And we're finally seeing the fruits of the labour of all that work that is put in to kind of get him into the position of a first team place, and he's taken it. And ever since Tuchel's come in, he's been one of the first names on the team sheet. Again, unbelievable defending from him and the team last night. And I really do think even if we can't win games, we are so bloody difficult to break down. I mean, just shows how. And I think that could be the difference this year in the league. Not necessarily who scores the most goals and who can blitz teams away like we know City can do. It's more about who can go to those places when they're up against it and grind out those results and sneak those 1-0 wins or get those draws. And I think Chelsea are the best equipped to do that. Yeah,
mate, titles are built on a solid defence. And currently, for me, there is no better defence in the Premier League than ours at the moment. So it definitely bodes well for the team. Jules, just a couple of things to wrap up with before we conclude. What were your thoughts on Romelu Lukaku in this game? Obviously, a lot of the build-up was pitting Van Dijk up against Lukaku. Obviously, circumstances of the game dictated that it probably wasn't going to be the best game for Lukaku in an attacking sense, considering you're basically defending for the whole of the second half. But what did you make of his performance?
I don't. Look, I'm very critical of players too soon sometimes. I think that's one of my things. But to be on the critical side of the fence, I just think sometimes he doesn't do the simple things well. I think his first touch lacks it at times. You mentioned the opportunities where he had chances to put people through. He just doesn't look up again. I mean, simple things like looking up and anticipating your pass, and he's just got his head down. The biggest disappointment for me was he took on the challenge of Van Dijk in the game, which I've got no problem with because he fancied his chances. So that shows he's got confidence. But I just feel if he peeled off and just gave himself some distance and actually went up against Matip, I think he would have had a lot more luck. I pretty much knew that Van Dijk was just going to be too much for him. I think the experience, the fact that he's a bit more mobile, I just thought it was a bit of a mismatch. Physically he can definitely deal with Van Dijk, but I just think Van Dijk's on a different level defending. But he did create chance for other else. We saw that spin, and actually the defensive work he did in the second half. Not many forwards are able to do that and put in that sort of effort. So I'm being incredibly harsh. He's played 2 games, one of which he scored, and the other one he's played against the best side, arguably. At their own ground. So I haven't got any complaints, but that's just my one criticism, I think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think the only kind of perhaps negative again was N'Golo Kante picking up what looks like another injury. for me, it's a little bit concerning that he's now picking up quite a few niggles. And I think with a few days left in the market, if we can get a midfielder into the squad, then I think we need to do it, whether that's Saul Niguez on loan from Atletico Madrid or whether that's Tuchemane, the midfielder from Monaco. The drop-off for me when Kante doesn't play, we've got Jorginho, Kovacic, and then for replacements, we've basically got absolutely nothing. The manager doesn't really fancy Ruben. So I think we are quite light in that position. So for me, I'd like to add something else there just to give us a bit more options in the squad, because without Kante, that midfield is quite lightweight. I know Kovacic did very well when he came on, but he wouldn't want to go into a prolonged period with no N'Golo Kante.
No, I completely agree with you. He's again yesterday, just he's irreplaceable. He's the best at what he does, and when you lose him, you notice the difference. I think Chelsea have very similar style of footballers to Kante, so we're able to manage it a bit better when we are missing him. But the way he covers the pitch, gets his foot in, he's a delight to watch, and we're so grateful to have someone of that quality. But he is picking up injuries, and I think the demand he puts on himself physically is unrivaled in that team. And unfortunately, you pay the price sometimes with his last ditch challenging and all the rest of it. I think he's going to pick up injuries. So yeah, I think you're right. I think the window with the days we have left, I think we do need, even if it's just a squad filler, which is difficult to find because you're basically asking someone to come in and not play. But if we can make it, I think if we can add Koundé and a Saul or someone alike, I think it's a perfect window for Chelsea.
Yeah, 100% agree. And guys, that's myself and George's thoughts on Liverpool versus Chelsea. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.